Hello, friends. Welcome to the Kizuna India-Japan Study Forum. And those of you who are joining for the first time, let me give you a brief introduction about the Kizuna India-Japan Study Forum. It was launched in September 2022 by the MOSAI, an association formed by Indian scholars who spent a year or more doing research in Japan. And today we have MOSAI President, Dr. Jain, with us. The objectives of the forum are to explore, document, and bring to light the lesser known or under-researched aspects of historical and cultural interactions between India and Japan, and disseminate the findings through lectures, seminars, conferences, publications, and digital and print media. In a span of 4 years, the forum has held 3 international conferences and 1 international symposium. Papers from the first 2 conferences are already published in form of books and are freely accessible on the internet. The Kizuna Forum also hosts lectures on monthly basis. Today we have 2 very eminent archaeologists with expertise in both terrestrial and maritime archaeology. Today's lecture is by Professor Sunil Gupta, and this is the 29th held under Kizuna lecture series, and he will be speaking on early connections between India and Japan through the Indo-Pacific Bead Trade, 50 BCE to 600 CE. Let me introduce both the speaker and the chair. Speaker Professor Sunil Gupta is former director of the Allahabad Museum, a national level museum under the Ministry of Culture. Post-retirement, he served as officer on special duty at the Prime Minister's Museum, New Delhi. A PhD from the Deccan College Postgraduate Institute, University of Pune. He has vast experience of doing research at Ghent University, Belgium, Max Planck Institute of the History of Science, Berlin, and the Center of World in the Viking Age, Uppsala University, Sweden. Professor Gupta has published extensively on national and international platform and is the editor of the Journal of Indian Ocean Archaeology, published by the Indian Archaeological Society. Welcome, Professor Gupta. And now let me introduce the chair. Professor Alok Tripathi is a PhD from Jivaji University, Gwalior. He is a distinguished archaeologist and pioneer underwater archaeologist in India. He is the former Additional Director General of Archaeological Survey of India and currently a professor at Assam University, Silchar, and the Director Center for Archaeology and Museology in India. A pioneer in underwater archaeology, Professor Tripathi has worked as resource person in UNESCO Asia Pacific Field Schools for training underwater archaeologists from several countries. He has also led several groundbreaking marine explorations in the Arabian Sea, as well as in the Bay of Bengal. His latest, I read somewhere, was archaeological excavation in Arabian Sea near Dwarka and Bet Dwarka in Gujarat. So I welcome both the speaker and the chair, and I request Professor Tripathi to conduct the session. Thank you so much.
Thank you for this introduction and telling about Kizuna activities and introducing both of us. Today, Sunil is going to speak on the Indo-Pacific bead and try to tell about the evidence, what we find about maritime activities in and around the Indian Ocean and also extending up to Pacific Ocean. We know that Indians were master mariners right from very early time. We can very well establish it through archaeological evidence, at least, I say at least, to 5,000 years up to the Harappan period, where we get n number of evidence in the form of archaeological evidence, representation of boats, and direct and indirect evidence suggesting maritime activities on eastern as well as western sides of the country. As far as Indo-Pacific beads are concerned, I'm sure the Sunil will tell more in detail. These small glass beads have been found on a number of coastal and inland sites, both on the Indian Ocean as well as in the Pacific Ocean's rim countries, uh, starting or stretching from Africa to Korea. And there are number of sites which have got a variety of these glass beads. They are very small, beautiful in various colors, in various shapes, and they have some peculiarities which make them different from other types of beads. And it was a commodity which was traded uh, through maritime trade. And this is one which we find at a number of places. And now, recently, the interest of archaeologists have focused on that. Generally, beads were not given so much importance earlier, because initially the pottery used to be the most important evidence on which almost all the studies were focused, or the major antiquities, and beads used to be referred and described. But now, with this kind of beads which have played a very important role in maritime trade, and which is giving a lot of information about ancient technology, it's a production, it's a trade network. So now a lot of information is being generated, and scholars like Sunil, Alok, and other, they have been focusing on the detailed study of these beats. And in today's presentation, on these early connections between India and Japan through the Indo-Pacific Bead Trade, Sunil will be speaking and establishing these evidence from 50 CE BCE to 600 CE, which is a very important early historical time bracket, where we have a variety of evidence for maritime activities. And as I can read, he would be telling more about the Indo-Pacific beads which have found from Yayoi and Kofun graves. So we all are eager to hear Sunil, who has expertise, who have done extensive work on the coastal settlements, maritime activities, particularly in Indian Ocean. And then I'm sure that his presentation is going to tell us a lot more about these beats, as well as the connection between India and Japan during early historical period, and the trade and cultural relations which these two countries were having. And through these archaeological evidence, we will try to understand how, in that early phase, these mariners or the traders or the settlements on these two countries were connected, and they were exchanging goods and having the relation. So I now request Sunil to start his presentation, for which we all are eager to listen.
Thank you, Alok. We'll start with some formal thanks to Dr. Ashok Jain, President of MISO, to Professor Sushila Narasimhan of Kizuma in Japan-India Study Forum, and of course to the chair, Professor Alok Tripathi, my heartfelt thanks for inviting me, and to all the assembled scholars, I would say, arigato gozaimasu. With this, I would begin my talk by first sharing my PowerPoint, which will basically be what I will present before you, the evidence. So just allow me to share the screen. So this is, you just have to figure out PPT sharing option. It's trying to share the okay. Uh, can you see the PowerPoint?
Yes, we can.
Yes, yes, we can see.
Okay. Yes. Yes. Okay. So fine. So my talk is titled Early Connections Between India and Japan Through the Indo-Pacific Bead Trade, 50 BCE to 600 CE. As Alok has so nicely, articulated uh, the introduce the Indo-Pacific beads, I would take on from there. As you can see on the screen, the small beads over here, donut shaped, and on the scale, these are very small. Many of them would be even 2 to 3 millimeters in diameter, usually below 5 millimeters in diameter, or sometimes below 10 millimeters in diameter. And as I said, an artificial signature of early long distance trade in the Indian Ocean is observed in the distribution of these microbeads, which have been called Indo-Pacific. Actually, the full term is the Indo-Pacific monochrome drawn glass beads, which means that many of them are of different colors. They're not multicolored in the sense that not one bead had many colored, but some you will have red or green or blue. And drawn glass beads means it refers to the technique of well, there's no time to really go into detail of explaining the technique, but drawn means that they were these glass rods which were sort of pulled back out of the furnace, and then these beads were cut and molded and shaped. So monochrome drawn glass beads. And as I said, they're found as far apart as South Africa to Japan from 3rd century BC to 14th century AD. And so we will, basically weave our narrative around these beads. There has been very specific work which has been done on them, as I shall explain. And and so these particular beads that you see are from the site of Arikamedu in South India, which I believe to be one of the pioneering sites for the where the production of these beads began around the 4th, 3rd century BC. There are different points of view about it, but we will take that as the beginning. So now, before I go further, I would say today the presentation is based on specific conclusions and results of studies, which are principally two very detailed studies which were done on Indo-Pacific beads in Japan. First is my work in collaboration with Dr. Katsuhiko Oga at the International Center for Japanese Studies, Nishibunken, in 98-99 as part of my GSPS postdoctoral fellowship. And this involved extensive field research across Japan. And so these results are published in the Journal of South Asian Studies. The second study, which actually built on our work, is titled Ancient Japan and the Indian Ocean Interaction Sphere, Chemical Composition, Chronologies, Provenances, and Trade Routes of Imported Beads in Yayoi Kofun period, 3rd to 7th century by Katsuhiko Oga and Tomomi Tamura, and published in the Journal of Indian Ocean Archaeology. Now, of course, at this point, I would remember Professor Yoshinori Yasuda, who was the person who had invited me to Nichibunken. Sadly, he passed away on 31st of July, for which, I remember him and express my condolences. So now, to give the whole frame, as you can see, Japan is, there, up there in East Africa. But the thing that I will try to today sort of demonstrate is how this entire Indian Ocean world, or if you rather say Indo-Pacific world, the Indian Ocean and the Pacific region, especially Japan and Korea and southern China, how they were interconnected. This would be a narrative coming out of the bead studies. And you can see the circles that I made. This is basically a map showing how the trade from Roman Egypt to India, which we call the Indo-Roman trade, took place, which was a kind of trigger for Indian Ocean trade from Roman Egypt here. And, the ports, and then the circles here represent the major bead and glass distributions. So we will talk about the glass that came from Egypt as well. And here in South India, North India, the whole of Southeast Asia and Japan. So this is the wider frame on which we will discuss today. And of course, to show you some of the Roman glassware from the port site of Berenike in Egypt, which was basically still being excavated, and we have found a lot of Indo-Pacific beads there as well. And now, to move more towards the eastern part of the Indian Ocean and the Indo-Pacific. Now, again, I would like to create a context, just not the basically, the beads tell a story, but there is a larger picture. Some of the observations. Now, this is regarding some of the observations that we see very interestingly in the Eastern Indian Ocean, in mainly island Southeast Asia, right up to Japan, the prevalence of what we call double jar burials. This is as Paul Yule wrote, that it begins somewhere from Japan, and the western extremity of the jar burial pattern ends in South India, specifically at the site of Adi Chalanur. Now, this is a very distinct, practice of how to deal with their dead, and this is forming a kind of arc, as you can see, from South India up to Japan. And I will show you, in the next slide, that you can see that there's a double jar burial of the Yayoi period in Japan and a double jar burial in Adi Chalanur site in South India. Now, most of the Indo-Pacific beads that, I studied with Dr. Oga in Japan, the majority of them, almost 90%, came from these double jar burials of the Yayoi period. And of course, the Kofun tombs, I guess, were bigger. I really did not get so much of a chance to study the Kofun beads up to 600 AD so intensively. But yes, the further work which has been done, I will share with you so that we can form a conclusion. And then we come back to South India, and you can see the transpeninsular routes over here from these ports which were existing in the early historic period, which is as the period here from 1st century BC to almost 5th-6th century AD. And the important part is Adi Chalanur is somewhere here down, and then we are talking about Arikamedu here on the Bay of Bengal. This is a very important site, and you can see that this is the river Ariyamkupam, and the banks of the river are actually the mound formation. This picture was taken way back in 1989. And now, this was a fascinating site, almost called an Indo-Roman trading station, because we recovered a lot of amphorae from there, a bead factory, huge amount of Indo-Pacific beads, glass waste, And also, as you can see in the A here, this is a magnification of a cameo blank. So the famous Roman ring stones, which are made on semi-precious stones, the blanks are produced here in Arikamedu. This is a Redgate cup, and below are the glass imitations of a green beryl bead, and this is of course Redgate. So you can see the complexity of the bead and stone crafting, and even imitation of semi-precious stone in glass that was taking place at Arikamedu was truly a fusion of Indian and Roman technologies which came together. That's the point. And you can see the glass crafting on the left is that again you can see the glass waste from Arikamedu, and on the right, of course, the Indo-Pacific beads, the small ones over there. The scale is also there. And then, of course, then how did all this go right up to Japan? So this is, of course, an introductory map, and we have to be now looking at all possibilities of this, which I will, say more on detail. But there is the coastal trade through China, southern China, up to here. There is the sea trade, and one is not sort of claiming that ships sailed from Arikamedu and went right up to Japan. This would have been a segment trade, and also the question of these bead technologies. The Indo-Pacific bead technologies also migrated. The craftspeople migrated to Southeast Asia in the early centuries AD. So we have the same manufacturing taking place at Southeast Asian sites like Klong Thom, Kuala Seling, and up to Vietnam. So we are having, and I will show you the chemical compositions, and these segmented movements in batches, as we say, was reaching Japan. So now, look, this is the map which was, we published this together. This is attributed to Dr. Oga. This is the distribution, as you can see, the very thick distribution of Indo-Pacific beads, imported Indo-Pacific beads in Japan. So they appear for the first time in burials which are basically in the 1st century BC. That's why I said 50 BCE. There are a few beads which appear in Fukuyama. And then basically there was a dramatic and huge inflow of these beads in the 1st century AD, 2nd century AD. The 1st, 2nd century AD, you must remember, was also the most intense period of Indo-Roman trade, and we'll get the connections. Now, why I say imported was because glass production began in Japan in the 7th century AD. So till the Yayoi and Kofun periods, most of the glass was imported. Even if beads are made in Japan, it was from the remelted glass from importations. And these are the first of the Indo-Pacific beads that were photographed by me in Japan. And they are called Marudama and Kodama is the operative word. Marudama approximately 0.5 centimeter or more in diameter, and Kodama anything smaller than that. So there has been a tradition in Japan of studying these beads for a long time. They're well, recorded, and we could carry out some of the studies. So in the 2000 study, a total of 162 microbead tomb sites were plotted, and representing 70% of the Yayoi period tombs in Japan, where Indo-Pacific beads have been found. So you can see this map is going to appear several times. And then in this next study, which took place in 2013, this study was upgraded to more than 100,000 glass beads were recorded in Yayoi period from 350 sites, and 500,000 glass beads in Kofun period from more than 3,500 sites. So there was, so what I'm saying is that the bead importation began very slowly in the 50 BC and 1st century BC, but increased dramatically. There was a huge flow from 1st century AD, 2nd century, 3rd century, but from the Kofun period, 4th to 6th century, there was an even bigger, escalation, bigger rise of importation. So you could imagine the amount of these beads which were flowing into Japan. You can see that these are the blue beads from the Kyoto region, 1st, 2nd century AD. And as I said, that this is mainly the beads, the tombs that were, from which the beads have been recovered. And most of the beads that have been found in Japan are largely blue, but there are other colors. So You can see the concentration of finds is mainly in the area over here, northeast Kyushu, in the Kyoto area and the Tokyo Shiba area. These are the concentrations where these beads are found, though we went right up to the north part here around Sendai and we did find few beads. But this is also related to the huge amount of inflow from especially China and Korea, which happened in the Yayoi period, as a lot of transmissions of iron and other material which came in. So it was part of related to that as well, and of course the map. And then, as I said, the most common colors observed was blue, uh, in hues of cobalt blue, light blue, and blue green. Now we must remember the color cobalt blue. This is very important as we come up with the slides. Green beads came next, though the numbers are much less than blue. And and then there were the red and reddish brown beads of opaque variety. Now this, as you can see over here in the slide, all these beads, the blue ones are here, the green ones you can see, and the red ones. I'll show you a bigger picture from Arikamedu. These are called Arika beads, or they are paste glass beads. They are very opaque. They're typical from Arikamedu. And of course, the bead that you see here is exactly like what we find in Arikamedu. There is no difference at all. And probably many of them were coming from Arikamedu itself, as the chemical compositions are showing, which were not showing when we did the study. So from the recent study, and if you see that this is the, on the left is the drawn glass bead from Yayoi, Japan. You can see that this glass is not really translucent or transparent. It is more opaque. So we call it the paste glass bead. And on the right, you can see these are SEM magnifying images of paste drawn glass beads from Arikamedu. So you can see the paste glass below. This is a waste fragment. And so this is very typical. These are called Mutisala beads in Southeast Asia, or Arika beads later, which are very typical. So now these, again, as I said, that these are SEM enhanced images of a blue Indo-Pacific bead from Arikamedu, and see how the same it is from the Japan beads. And of course, this is a more like reddish color, but it is not opaque. It is translucent like the rest. Now, the compositions of Indo-Pacific beads found in Yayoi tombs of Sasaka and other sites are close to the results obtained from Trakyu, Banxiang, which are in Southeast Asia, and Arikamedu. Interestingly, blue microbeads comprise the highest quantity of microbeads also produced at Arikamedu. So both in Japan and in South India, most of the Indo-Pacific beads produced at that time match. So this is very interesting. Now, this is the result of the latest study by Oga and Tamura in 2013, which makes some breakthroughs. As you can see, now let me just say, when you see here the group P over here, it is referring to beads with a high potash content. And if you see the group S here, these are beads with sodium oxide, only natron consent, soda lime beads, what we call. And then, of course, the L over here is beads with a huge lead barium content. Now, through these composition signatures, we can know from where they came. Now, very clearly, the beads, mainly in China, are of the lead barium content, which is very well established for decades, no doubt about it. Now, the interesting part is about the beads with the potash and the the natron content, and these were also broken down into subgroups by the later study. And as you can see, the group potash here and the the soda lime groups S2, S1, S4, and SVA are showing this kind of circle, which is encircling Arikamedu and parts of Southeast Asia. So this was the kind of beads which were produced with these compositions in around the Bay of Bengal, and most of the sites in Southeast Asia also showed the typical, potteries from Arikamedu. So craftspeople went over there. But most interesting, and these are chemical compositions of beads of Yayoi and Kofun period found in Japan. These are the compositions. So this is a study of the beads in Japan. And some of the beads that you find in Japan belong to group S1, which was produced in the Mediterranean. And then there was a pure potash group in South Vietnam and South China, and of course the lead group. So this is really a very big breakthrough study, which in terms of chemical. Now, that's number one, the chemical composition. The number two is that most of the potash composition beads found in Japan and the what we call the S group, which is a soda lime group, had a large amount of them were blue, not only blue, but they were colored by cobalt. So some of them were cobalt colored. And this is very interesting because most likely, as we will still see, that there was a movement of cobalt colored raw glass from Mediterranean, from the Egyptian coast along the sea trade to India, and then on to Southeast Asia and Japan. And you can see that these ingots have been found. On the left is a cobalt blue colored glass vase from Arikamedu. You can see this is a fragment of a raw glass that was imported. And interestingly, this is the same kind of cobalt blue glass, raw glass, from the port site of Berenike on the Egyptian Red Sea coast, same period of 2nd century AD. So these beads, they needed the raw glass, which was exported from, maybe mixed with other glass constituents to make these blue beads. And you can see over here that this is a Kofun period bead of cobalt blue glass. So this is very interesting, the coloring agent being cobalt. So we have these compositions which clearly show that a huge amount of bead trade was taking place from the Bay of Bengal, from South India, parts of Southeast Asia, up to Japan through segmented routes. And raw glass acquired from Egypt was being reworked in South India and in parts of Southeast Asia to produce these cobalt colored beads, and which were being exported to Japan as well as Korea. Of course, we haven't dealt with Korea here, but thousands of beads also entered Korea in the Kaya period. And you can see here that this is again the Kofun period. It's a very interesting bead. It's a gold foil glass bead. Again, very a typical work from Byzantine Roman period after the 3rd century AD. We know that the Roman Empire shifted towards the east and became the Byzantine Empire. And Byzantine trade is another big story which relates to Kofun. And as we see that, a lot of the beads were coming from the Byzantine area through different routes to Japan. Now, this brings us to the point that what could have been, the routes. There are several possibilities of these routes which we need to discuss. One of them, which I had written about, was that there existed. If you see the map on the left, which is the colored map, here the Arikamedu is shown, and you see over here in Maldives there are the cowries, which are the special seashells which were favored by Northeast tribes. I've written a paper on this. It is about the huge amount of spices, especially Malabathrum leaves, which were coming from Northeast and South China down the Bengal coast to Arikamedu, Trans-Peninsula around it. And then in return, a lot of Indo-Pacific beads and cowrie shells were reaching through the Indian Northeast into southern China. And I have explored this area as part of my JSPS fellowship in Japan. And we have seen that there were even imitation cowries and other things. So one of the things could have been that this actually carried on to South China, turning around along the Chinese coast up to Korea and then reaching Japan. But also, obviously, since Southeast Asia, the maritime routes were open, in segmented routes, the beads would have gone along island Southeast Asia, through Philippines to Ryukyu Islands, Taiwan, and into Japan. So these are now the routes which need studied. There are contexts, as I said, like the jar burials and others. And now some of the legends and early chronicles of Japan and Korea speak of the arrival of seafaring communities and the contribution to the genesis of early dynasties. The first volume of the Kojiki and Nihon Shoki, the oldest Japanese chronicles, speak of the daughter of the ocean people giving birth to the Emperor Jinmo, who established the kingdom of Yamato at Nara in the 4th century AD. The Korean chronicle Samguk Yusa informs that the first queen of the Kaya kingdom in southern Korea, 1st to 4th century AD, came from the south in a ship with red sails. So commentators see in these legends pointers to early maritime conduits linking the Far East with the Eastern Indian Ocean. Uh, so we have, of course, the archaeological debates as well, where this is again the bigger picture that I'm presenting, and this is, of course, the ongoing research that is going on with the Viking Center in Uppsala. This was a veritable explosion. As you can see, the red dots represent carnelian, and the green dots represent the glass beads. So some of the trade routes from the land were also open through Korea to Japan. But most interesting is these routes from either from Northeast India through the passes in China, along the coastal China, or the sea routes from Vietnam and Southeast Asia reaching here. And these could form part of larger debates. One of them being what I call the Bellwood model, which said that Austronesian sailors, basically sailed from southern China to Southeast Asia, establishing colonies and into the South Pacific. But the limitation of these studies have been till now that the scholars who are researching it never really researched that if the Austronesians are sailing to Southeast Asia into the South Pacific, they could also have sailed north into Japan. I've been reading some of the papers. This is a fertile field of research to connect the bead evidence with the the evidence of maritime and the dong drums and other things which depict the vessels in the first century AD. The evidence is there. And also, as I said, the similar thing was, which is again a part of the study that I'm doing, that why the Austronesians did not sail west into the Bay of Bengal and in Africa. We have found sites like Shankarjan and Golbai Sasan. The same problem of the inhibited model prevails. We have to break out of that. In that way also, the studies of Indo-Japanese studies on the beads share a similar problem, that how do we look at these Austronesians or sailors, which would have been the ones who would have set up these maritime trading networks, which were taking the beads from South India and Southeast Asia to Japan. So this is where I think I'm trying to stick to most of the time. Thank you for this. Again, arigato. I end with these pictures of the Sarnath Stoop in India, which recently got the World Heritage UNESCO recognition, and of course the beautiful Kinkakuji Pavilion in Kyoto, which I still remember very much. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Sunil, for your this wonderful presentation about beads and all the work which has been done. Now, paper is open for discussions. So, if there is any question or comment, we may have a discussion.
May I, Professor Tripathi?
Any question?
Yes, sir, just
Yeah,
an
please.
observation. I think it's a fascinating presentation. Many thanks, Gupta ji. Fantastic, very good. My observation is that, as all of us know, that last couple of years, the political debate and the political dialogue is emphasizing the importance of the Indo-Pacific. And I think this is a very important piece that you have presented, Professor Gupta, because we need to emphasize the long historical connection with Japan up to Egypt to the Indo-Pacific. And in that context also, we are delighted that you, Professor Gupta and Professor Tripathi, has brought this into the fold of Kizuna. Obviously, your presentation has excited me a lot. And this is just one of the beautiful work jointly done by Archaeological Survey with the Japanese. But Shri Dikshit, K.N. Dikshit also lived in the same colony where I do. And her daughter Meeta is our.
Yes, of course.
So they have, Dikshit Saab has been telling me that a number of joint excavations with Japanese have been done by Indian Archaeological Survey. And I think that aspect somehow has never come out in the dialogues with other scholars.
Right.
I would very much like Professor Tripathi to tell us as to how do we organize a joint symposium seminar on archaeological surveys between India and Japan. Ideally, we would like to target this for next year because that's 75 years of diplomatic relations between India and Japan. Now, how do I go about doing it? I have no idea. But this is where it's not related per se to your talk, but it opens up possibilities. So I thought I'll mention this with the permission of the chair. Thank you.
It's a good idea. Actually, there is a need to do a lot of work because there has not been much focus or not much work on the maritime trade and connections. Because underwater archaeology has done few sites on the Indian coast. There has been some participation on the other side of the sea, and there is a great scope and a tremendous scope. Only thing is that we have to begin with. And as you said, with the Japan and the 75 years are happening means next year, I think Archaeological Survey of India, which is the premier institution for archaeological studies, would be the right institution to take up this. We can discuss this with the Director General, and since the underwater archaeology wing of the ASI is now active, and they have also started international collaboration from this year. Earlier, we were working in India only, but now with we have a international MOU for the collaboration with Denmark. So now even with the Japan also, the possibilities can be explored, and I think it would be the right unit of the ASI which take up the work. And since sufficient time is there, I'm sure that the Government of India and the Archaeological Survey of India would definitely take such proposals positively, and we will also try to push it up from our side so that it can be materialized. And definitely, it will bring out a lot more to the light, which is waiting for thousands of years or hundreds of years. So we can have a discussion on that, and then we can discuss the matter with the Director General, and a formal proposal can be sent to the ASI, and I'm
Sure.
sure that they should take it up.
Thank you very much.
Yes, of course.
We'll draft a proposal and send it to you for consideration.
Yeah, please. I'll be happy. Yeah. So,
Uh,
any other?
yeah, Good
Yes,
afternoon. I'm Dr. Susan Mishra. I had
yes, Dr.
a
Mishra.
query for Professor. I wanted to find out if there is any context of Sri Lanka and other places in Southeast Asia in this entire network that is carrying the beads. That's number one. Number two, I'm also interested in knowing the sources of the raw materials of these beads and whether it is just Roman or it is only Arika Medu, or there are materials that are also being transported from Southeast Asia towards Japan, and very interestingly also jar burials, and the context that these thousands of beads have been found in. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the question. You see, when I mention Arikamedu, I should clarify that I mention it as a type site or a representative site for several bead Indo-Pacific glass bead making workshops which were there along the coast. including in Sri Lanka. Now, from as well, we know that several sites in Sri Lanka have yielded a lot of glass beads, including Indo-Pacific beads. I need to go back and check whether we really had like what you call bead crafting centers there, as we had in not only in Arikamedu, but sites like Karaikadu and all along the coast. But so that's one thing, that definitely Sri Lanka was part of this whole network of what I call the Bay of Bengal interaction sphere. Now, about Southeast Asia, you see, the thing is that, uh, and I've written this paper as well, came out online in Oxford, that sites which are producing Indo-Pacific beads on the Thai coast of the Bay of Bengal or the Malaysian coast are showing exactly the same, assemblages of inscriptions, pottery, and beads which are in Arikamedu, which is indicating that the craftspeople were also migrating. So the technology seemed to have migrated from India to Southeast Asia. This is my belief. And then, so the beads were not only traveling, the craftspeople were also traveling, and they were moving eastwards towards Vietnam, setting up several centers. And obviously, the local people and Southeast Asians also joined. As you know, it became a hybrid situation. So I showed you I can send you the paper as well, which just came out. I showed you the map of the very specific compositions, glass compositions of the beads. And those compositions very clearly indicate, that a lot of soda lime glass was produced in South India and Southeast Asia. Potash glass also. A certain specific kind of soda lime glass, natron glass, was produced in the Mediterranean, together with cobalt glass. So this glass in some quantities was also reaching South India and becoming part of what we call the Indo-Roman workshops. And so some of the beads in this consignment, which were going through Southeast Asia, in workshops there as well, it was reaching the huge supply chain. You can imagine the complex. They were all reaching Japan. And that is why the compositions in that map were being done on the basis of imported beads found in Japan, but relating to these source areas. So I hope that was your question.
Thank you very much, and a very interesting talk. And I also feel this entire context of jar burials or a period, I think, in archaeology, to take up burial patterns or certain types of burials across India and Southeast Asia would form an exceedingly interesting topic. And thank you very much, sir, for the very interesting talk.
Thanks.
Uh, Professor Gupta, I have a question. You showed us the slide of cobalt blue bead, both from Mediterranean and Arikamedu. So how do you distinguish? I mean, the color was almost the same. So how do you
Yes.
distinguish between which one is from Mediterranean and which one is from Arikamedu? And then second question, you mentioned that it was known as Arika bead or Mutisala.
Yes. Yes.
So
Yes.
Motisala, I think this is a combination of Sanskrit word moti and salah. I think that in Indonesian it means fake beads or some artificial bead.
Right.
So that means these beads were not necessarily from Arikamedu. They could have been also from Indonesia. So how to distinguish?
Thank you, Professor, for the both very interesting questions. I think when we talk about the cobalt, now, if we begin from the Japan beads, Indo-Pacific beads found in Japan, so the study is saying that large parts of the beads, which are blue in color, more than 80% were blue in color, and a large percentage of them were colored with cobalt. Same situation is obtaining at Arikamedu, with a lot of beads were found colored with cobalt. Now, this is interesting that where that cobalt was coming from, right? Now, what we are seeing now, this is a kind of work in progress, and I would really like to. That question also struck me, in fact. But what we have is the Periplus of the Erythraean Sea, first century AD. The Greek text talks about huge export of raw glass from Roman Egypt to India. It talks about colorless glass. But at the same time,
We can't hear you. I think some internet problem.
we are finding this fragmented Berenike, which was a port exporting everything to South India. Audible?
Yes, yes, you
Yes,
are
yes.
audible. Yes.
Am I audible? So this is very interesting, and it struck me also that we need to study the samples from Egypt and India to see whether they are the same cobalt or they are. Am I audible?
Your voice is crackling actually.
The net problem, I suppose.
Yeah, please continue. There is some net issue in between. Now we can't hear you.
No, we can't hear you.
Okay, so I think this is very analyze the cobalt glass. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah, fine.
yes.
Can you hear me? Yes. So again, we need to analyze the cobalt glass from Egypt and from India, these specimens, to know where that cobalt was sourced, because in the composition, they are also talking about some cobalt which is being sourced from Iran as well. So it's important, path of investigation about the cobalt. And about the mutasila, that is a term which has been commonly used for these opaque red glass beads. Which are found in Indonesia
Some network issue.
also, in large numbers. So the Mutasila beads at Arikamedu, Southeast Asia, and they're reaching Japan. Indonesian, it has been given. Am I audible?
Yes, in between it becomes a problem.
Okay. Yeah, so what I'm saying is that Mutasila, madam, is an Indonesian term. It has been given to these beads and adopted by archaeologists as a technical term.
So we can take one more question or comment if there.
Hello, sir. If you can hear me.
Yes, Prabir,
Yes.
I think
Right.
Prabir has raised his prayer.
Professor, thank you so much for such a insightful and a fantastic lecture. Professor, we know this Periplus has mentioned about, Malabatrum coming out of Assam, and very interested on this Assam Yunnan axis. Could you also tell us where these glass beads serve as kind of a primary currency or an ornamental accessories or exchange goods brought by traders to acquire this for local forest resources? Thank you.
Well, yes, I think, yes, I mean, this is very interesting. Look, you have to understand that two major items were valued a lot in the Indian Northeast and in the stretch across Myanmar into southern China, which were cowrie shells, and which were primarily coming from the Maldives area as well as Bay of Bengal, and Indo-Pacific beads, which were used for ornamentation to put into dress and other stuff. So I would say that they were not like what you call like a money currency. I think both the items were more very high value cultural artifacts against which I think the traders were trading for very precious forest products like malabatra. So this is there, and also a lot of the beads, the blue beads especially, as they went not only to Southeast Asia but to Japan, and they're found in large numbers in these jar burials. So my view is this, that these beads were not just decorative items, but they had again a very strong cultural meaning as well, auspicious uh, meaning to them, spiritual meaning attached to them. So I think this is was a huge cultural region, starting from Northeast India, which saw these artifacts, the beads, very differently.
Perfect, sir. Thank you. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Sunil, and thanks to the audience also for their interest and putting very interesting and intelligent questions. I'm sure there would be more queries because the presentation was such a interesting and wonderful, very well illustrated, and it
Thank
has
you.
brought out many new aspects which even uh, I can say many of us archaeologists would not be aware of, because now day by day the archaeology is becoming more focused and very deeper on a smaller objects. I can say even finding the Indo-Pacific bead itself tells that the excavation has been done like an excavation, because you will find an object of 1 millimeter or 2 millimeter uh, of size, and that too of a red color, which generally it is like a soil. Because when we were excavating very recently in Dwarika, we have got a variety of and good number of these glass beads. And finding them in a soil itself suggests that now the excavations are becoming more systematic and scientific. They are not diggings as were done in earlier days, where not 600, 800, or 1200 laborers used to dig. And when they pick up some big object, they will report it to their sahib. So in such excavations, you can't expect that such a wonderful or very small objects could have been found. And now the kind of studies which are being carried out on these beads are revealing a lot more information. It's almost 100 years of these study and reporting of these beads from 1930, where first they were initially recorded in Malaysia, if I am correct. And then in 1985,
Yes.
Francis gave this term Indo-Pacific beads. And then now there are focused studies. And in presentation, Sunil has brought out several very interesting features, such as these double jar burials and the findings of similar objects in Adichanallur or in peninsular India, and also in Japan and other places in Southeast Asia. So that we are aware that it's not the maritime activities were not only transporting material, they were also transporting the experts or the persons who were working on that, and also the ideas and technology which were going from one place to another place. It was mixing with new trades, and then it was going like the cobalt glass is coming, cobalt blue glass is coming from Mediterranean and Egypt, and then it is being used by the Indian uh, workmen, and then being made in the uh, beads, which is being used as ornament and which is highly valuable, and then it is being traded to other places. So as we say that archaeology includes the 3A: antiquity, actions, and the actors. So now Earlier, people just focused on the antiquities. If you see the report, and most of the reports, they will just report what was found there. But now archaeologists, with the help of scientists, are trying to understand the action and also trying to identify the actors who were producing them or who were using them. And that's the purpose where we really reach to our final objectives to understand the past societies, their activities, their relations, their technology, their economy. And when such micro studies are done, they reveal a lot more information what we get only from the major archaeological objects, which are beautiful and which you find in the museums, and they are found in good quantity. I am sure that many such more objects are lying in the reserve collections of many of the offices and the museums, because not much attention is paid, and now the time has come where we have experts who have done extensive work, and especially like the micro studies and the chemical composition studies. They will tell more which we cannot observe only by means seeing them or photographing them. And now we are getting more and more information, and these evidence establish these activities beyond any doubt with concrete evidence, scientific and archaeological or material evidence. So it was really a very educating presentation, particularly for me, because I had very little idea about these sites. And you have mentioned a number of sites in Japan and how they were traded from one part to the another one, and then how they would have been used, manufactured, their studies, their analysis, their use. And it's really it has ignited a lot of interest in many of the listeners. I'm sure they will also look for more material, and they will come out with more information which can be shared with the experts, and then more work can be done. So I'm very happy to be here, and I'm sure that the purpose of Kizuna India Japan Study Forum
Yes.
to bring out lesser studied areas and the understudied areas and sites and the materials is really fulfilled in today's exercise. And I really thank them for organizing this, giving me this opportunity. And I'm sure that, as you have said, we will look for more structured international collaborative projects where India and the other experts can work together. And then definitely it's a good for both the sides, because we will be exchanging our expertise and information, and then definitely we will be able to establish cultural and historical relation between India and Japan based on material evidence, scientific studies, and then that will help us to understand our past maritime activities, our ancient technology, trade relations, and many other aspects. So I thank the speaker for this wonderful presentation, a very detailed study, scientific analysis, and all the details which has been given. I also thank Kizuna India Japan Study Forum for organizing this and giving an opportunity to all those who have joined to learn something more. And I'm sure that such activities continues, and we keep progressing in this direction and learning more. So now I hand it over to Shushila ji.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Sunil Gupta, and
Thank
thank
you.
Alok Tripathi. It was indeed a pleasure interacting with two remarkably dynamic scholars, both of whom are bound by a shared obsession with the past. Both have dedicated their lives unearthing humanity's buried past, meticulously extracting historical treasures from both land and sea to enrich our understanding of history. It was really a fascinating presentation. In fact, I had many questions regarding the glass coloring technology, I mean, because you showed colorful beads. So
we will discuss later.
yes, yes. And then that means, and also the fashion, that means the women were wearing multi-strands of those tiny beads as necklaces or maybe as bracelet, or so we will discuss it some other time. But I would really like to thank both of you and all the participants for their interest in Kizuna activities and joining us via Zoom. The next lecture, the 30th lecture, is on Saturday, 19th September by Professor Sharvani Gupta, formerly from Netaji Institute of Asian Studies of Kolkata. She will be speaking on inspiration and loss of faith, Japan in 20th century Bengali thought and writing. And all these lectures are available on YouTube, Kizuna India Japan Study Forum, and the MOSAI website. So thank you very much, and hope
Thank you.
on Saturday, 19th September. Thank you very much.
Thank you.